Hey everybody, I was just cutting up the sheet metal for the little dump trailer that I'm building. Yes, it's been taking me like a year to build this thing. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the Amico Power Cut 40. I had to remember the name. It's the Cut 40. I'll put a link in the description to Amazon where I picked it up. I've had it for about a year, but even in that year's time, I've honestly not used it a whole lot. I'm totally brand new to plasma cutting. I'm not a great plasma cutter by any means, or plasma cutter machine operator, however that's said. But I have done quite a few cuts and it's been sitting in my shop for a year. So there's a little bit of longevity there if that's something you're concerned about, which is obviously something we're all concerned about when we pick up cheap tools from China that their name brand counterparts are significantly more expensive. I've never used this on 220 volt power. It's always been 110 volts. And it's always been off an extension cord because of the situation of my shop. It's all I really have available to me right now, and it just kind of is what it is. But even with that being said, it still has worked great. What I was just cutting at the intro to this video is 14 gauge steel. So pretty thin stuff, pretty thin sheet metal, but this thing handles that stuff totally just fine. I think I've done up to 1/8 inch without any problems. But then I've also gone on to practice with some 1/4 inch steel that on 110 volts it kind of struggled with. So with 220, I have no doubt that it'd probably blow right through this. But with the thin sheet metal for some of the things I've been building, it's been doing great. I'd really like to get to where I could plug it into 220 volts and run it off of 220 volt power all the time, but it's just a matter of when I can get there. And it'll be a few more years. So hopefully this thing lasts a few more years. So with that being said, I just kind of want to show you the air compressor that I use and the air setup with it, just to kind of give you an idea, especially if you know more about plasma cutting than I do, what kind of setup I've got going on here. So the air compressor that I've been using is just this 21 gallon oil lube air compressor. It's a Harbor Freighter Central Pneumatic. It's been a great air compressor, and I've even got a review on that if you'd like to go check it out. I'll have a thumbnail at the end of this video that you can click on to check out my review on this air compressor. And I've just got this line that runs up to my air-water separator. I think that there's an air-water separator inside of the plasma cutter. So I'm kind of doubling up right here. So hopefully that is, they're both doing a decent job between the two cheap ones. Then I've just got my air hose reel, which has been a great air hose reel also from Harbor Freight. So I figured I'd just start off here with the back on the actual machine. As you can tell, it's 115 or 230, 110, 240. It's all the same thing. It is a 1/4 inch NPT. It's just a standard quick connection to your air hose. Most of you have these connected to your air compressors. And so that's where your cutting gas goes. And then down here, You have a drain, which is actually pretty nice. They give you just a quick little, I think it's a 1/4 inch, maybe 3/8 inch quick connect where you just get the right sized hose, plug it in, and then you can run your drain wherever you want to. So that's pretty much the back of this little unit. We'll move over to the side real quick. So they give you this nice access panel to the inside of the machine, and I wasn't actually totally sure before I opened it up, but I figured that it was opening up to this this air filter on here for the air water separator, and that little hose runs down to the drain. So kind of nice that they added that in, but at the same time it would have been a lot nicer if you could have just had like a little tab, kind of like on my Forney here, which you can barely see, where you just lift up the tab and you can open it up and it flips open. But for the price you pay, you honestly cannot complain too much. And of course, if I would just read, it tells you right there that you have access to the air filter to change out the filter. So getting to the business end of this unit, there is a couple of carrying handles on the top. Not that I'll hardly ever use those, but it's nice that they included them and that they're there. Then you get to the digital display, and there's nothing special about it, but it works, and I'm glad that it's there. It's a nice little extra feature they could have just cheaped out. I like that it shows your amperage settings on a digital display like that. Then the power button. The power button feels decent. I'm not going to click it on and off a bunch of times because I don't want to do that. But it's got good positive resistance. It feels like a decent button. It's probably cheap, but I don't really feel like I'm going to have any problems with it. The air regulator gauge here is nothing special, just an analog gauge. It works good and it's accurate compared to my air compressor air regulator that I have on the air compressor itself. They match up. So either they're both junk or they're both fairly accurate. I'm going to go with the latter. And then this is just your air regulation knob. Nothing special about it. It works. It does feel a little cheap, if I'm being totally honest. And then a pretty nice dial here. Nothing too terribly special about it, but it just is a decent quality feeling dial to adjust your amperage here. So something to note real quick. This is running off of 110 volts, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, and that is not 42 amps. I believe that's going to be almost half. And the thing is, it's probably not accurate. But if you're just running this off 220 volts like it was really made to, of course it was made to run off of 110 volts too. But 220, I think you're going to have a really accurate, or at least a fairly accurate amperage rating on here. And you can kind of figure it out on your own if it is even, maybe slightly off. But it's not accurate when you're using 110 volts. I think a good rule of thumb is just to figure that when you're using it on 110 volt power, that your amperage is actually going to be about half of what is displayed on the digital display there, as well as the markings on the dial. Really overall with the, I guess we'll call it the control panel here, no complaints. I like it. Everything works just fine and seems of reasonable quality. So I want to talk just a little bit about the ground clamp really quick. It's a pretty nice ground clamp, a little bit on the big side, a little funny looking, but it's pretty decent quality because you have these copper connections and then a braided copper wire in between, just to give you a really good connection on your workpiece. As far as I know, the wire thickness is totally adequate. I'm sure that to even import these, they probably have to meet at least some sort of certain standard, and I'm sure that they're fine. One last thing on that is you can use standard DINS connections, so if you wear this thing out or get a short in it or something, you can either just buy a new ground clamp with a new DINS connection on it, or cut that off. I don't know, whatever you find you need to do. That's a pretty standard thing coming with DINS connections, and I think that's a nice feature about it. So a little on the torch, it is a, if you can see that, it's a PT31 torch, which I believe is a standard torch. You can pick them up from better brands if you find that you want a better one, which you might, but so far this thing's been adequate. It's got this kind of cheesy guard here, which sometimes I'd like to just cut off, but overall no problems with the torch. I'm sure it's cheap. It's not a great torch. But let me get to the consumable since we're here on the torch. The consumables that come with this torch are honestly crap from my experience. Just to kind of explain why, maybe there's some operator error here thing, totally possible, I'm not going to deny that. But when I would drag it across my workpiece, because that's how I saw other people doing it, they just set the contact right on the workpiece and drag it across it. So when I've seen other people do that, that's obviously what I came and did with this when I first started it, and it would just stick. Just like you'd stick a rod when you're doing SMO, it would just stick, and I couldn't drag it, no arc. All it would just be is just sticking. So anyway, then I got to the point where I decided, okay, I need to drag it just this perfect distance above the workpiece. My arm's the workpiece in this example. So that I still have an arc, but I'm not sticking the torch to the workpiece. And it was just really, really complicated. It was really hard, and I couldn't hardly cut anything, honestly, for crap. And so I ended up buying some more consumables just so I had extra ones. And when I got them, I went ahead and threw it in here and just did a couple practice cuts with it after I put the new consumables in. And I just tried putting it on there and dragging across the workpiece. And it worked great. It cut great. The consumables, the little nozzle here didn't blow out like it was on the other one really quickly and get ruined. Now, with that being said, you will go through consumables faster using that method. If you keep it just like a hair above, like just like a couple millimeters above the workpiece, if you have that steady of a hand, then you can do that and you'll probably have some good luck. But I don't. I'm willing to just kind of waste the consumables and just drag it straight across the workpiece. I get a better cut that way. Yeah, so that's pretty much that. But definitely pick up better consumables. I'll put a link in the description to the ones I bought below, so if you're thinking of picking this up, you can just buy those with it and have your better consumables right on the spot. So yeah, guys, aesthetically, I think these are pretty nice machines. This Amico stuff definitely doesn't look bad. I've got the 160 amp stick welder that I hardly ever use because I'm really a terrible stick welder. I just like using MIG and flux core because it's just easier. Both of the Amico machines I have look good. They feel like they've got reasonably decent quality parts on them. The buttons and the switches are all decent. The dials are all pretty nice. They feel like they've got pretty positive resistance. Just feel like a decent quality part. Obviously not great. You're getting what you pay for here. The air hose has decent crimp on it. I don't think you're leaking air out of it. Wow, my rubber's already a little bit cracked on here, but anyway, so obviously, you're going to be sacrificing some things for the cost, and a few of those things are going to be some quality components. It's totally adequate for like a DIYer shop. I'm happy with it. Like I said, I've had it for about a year. I haven't cut a ton with it. Maybe 15 or 20 minutes worth of actual just straight cutting. And I mean, like, the machine's on and actively cutting a piece of metal, probably 15 minutes, 20 minutes total. So honestly, not a ton of time. I wish I had more time on this thing than that, and I can do an updated review totally. If the thing breaks, I'll probably let everybody know. But so far, I'm totally pleased. I think it cost me $250, something like that. Again, there will be a link in the description below for the plasma cutter and the consumables. I don't know what the price is right now off the top of my head, but I bet it's somewhere around $225, give or take 25 bucks. So, decent machine all the way around. I like it. I'm happy with it. I don't know if I'm proud to have it in my shop, but definitely happy it's here. I can now move away from cutting all my sheet metal with an angle grinder. And yeah, it's just a decent tool, and I'm totally satisfied with it thus far. Again, I'll give you some updates, I guess whether you want it or not. You can let me know in the comments below if you want an update on this, maybe at 2 years when I've used it some more. But so far at 1 year, maybe 20 minutes at the absolute most of actual runtime of cutting, I'm happy with it, and I would recommend it so far. So I really appreciate everybody for watching this video. If you could please give me a thumbs up, and if this is your first time here, please go click subscribe. I think it's this way. One of those ways on the video. I'd really appreciate it, and you can catch more DIY welding content, tools, and small engine stuff and things like that. So I just have a good time in here, throw it up on YouTube, and I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe and follow me here on YouTube. We'll see you next time.